Hello, everyone. This is Amy Hennon with the Maryland Volunteer Lawyer Service. Today, we have a really wonderful presentation about debt relief scams that we're really excited to share with you. Before we get into that, I want to draw your attention to some how you're going to be able to access this presentation later and how you can access some of our other trainings and other fun things. So if you navigate this website, which is mblslaw.org, it says volunteer. Apply to be a volunteer if you're not already a volunteer. We also have a link that we currently have available. And from the pro bono portal, you can actually select the kinds of cases that you want to look at. You can also select the county that you want to see. But for purposes of trainings, we have two different areas that you might want to check out. One is our attorney resources page, where we have a variety of resources. And then we have a recorded trainings menu. And from that, you can view a number of the previously recorded trainings that we have done in a lot of different areas. So with all of that, I am now going to turn to Trish Geddes. She is with Consumer Credit Counseling of Maryland, and which formerly known as Guidewell. Trish has been in the consumer credit counseling industry for 26 years, and 16 of those years she was serving as a counselor. 3 years she served as a corporate trainer, and 3 years as a compliance officer for the National Foundation of Credit Counseling. She currently works with CCCSMD as the VP of Operations and has been with the agency for 8 months. And she's a graduate of the College of William & Mary with a degree in psychology. And so with that, I'm going to turn things over to Trish, and she is going to take from there and take us through the presentation.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Amy, and for the rest of you for allowing me to meet with you today. I really appreciate it. This is such a timely topic. As Amy shared with you, I am with CCCSMD. We were formerly known as Guidewell in the community. Our legal name is Consumer Credit Counseling Service of Maryland and Delaware Incorporated. So what we're going to be talking about today is going to be debt relief and credit repair issues that are arising. So, and we're also going to look at possible ways to recover. I do want to interject, though, that there are some legitimate companies offering services that fall under the same umbrella, but there is a clear distinction between the legitimate organizations as well as the ones that fall under the umbrella of scam. So, again, although there are legitimate companies offering the kind of services that we're going to discuss today, there are many that don't work in the consumer's best interests and potentially fall into that category of scam. Unfortunately, most consumers fall victim because they're not aware of their options, nor are they aware of what the law requires as far as disclosures and services. So just going to give a brief overview. For-profit credit repair companies are required to provide a written contract explaining the consumer's legal rights and to give an overview of the services that they provide. They also are required to allow a right to counsel in the agreement within 3 days and without charge. And then the third is big. I know there's been a lot of buzz going around this one particularly, and that is that they have to complete promised services before charging the consumer a fee. I'm going to go into that fee piece of that in just a moment. But the next thing that we are going to take a look at is who the target audience appears to be. Unfortunately, debt relief service scams typically prey on the consumer who has significant credit card debt, or those who are having trouble. They're trying to get new credit, trying to perhaps purchase a home, and they're finding that their credit history is littered with derogatory statements, or it's reflecting their prior decisions that they've made as far as making timely payments, or those that are struggling with low credit score. Target consumers they're desperate. They want to stop the collection calls. They want to find that immediate relief. And so many times they're lured into the attractiveness of that quick fix. And again, they're unaware. They don't have that education as far as what those options are out there. As many of you may recall, You see student loan and housing. Those are kind of like two big hot topics. You've got trillions of dollars of debt in student loan now. That is the main area of concern. It seems it's kind of replaced almost housing concerns to some degree, but they're both still very timely. If you recall, about 10 years ago, the market was flooded with housing. Get out of foreclosure, stop prevention. We can do this for you. We're seeing that same kind of marketing strategy, littering the student loan. They're using aggressive advertising to lure the borrowers, but the caveat is they're incorporating language that makes it appear that it's coming from the U.S. Department of Education or its partners. So what student loan debt relief companies are they're private companies that provide, or rather they claim to provide, student loan management services for a fee. And they're oftentimes actually charging for things that consumers can do very easily on themselves, for themselves. The Department of Ed has a wonderful website that will walk clients through the entire process, let them know what type of repayment options there are, let them know how to get free help. But again, those scams that we're seeing now are heavily towards making folks pay hundreds and thousands of dollars to get help that's readily available, really at no cost or very little cost. So that's the target audience that we're looking at. They also claim that they can get negative things taken off of a consumer's history, and they're using celebrities. That's kind of the old marketing strategy. They're using celebrities, mailers, robocalling, all to entice consumers. Nowadays, we are so focused on social media and celebrity status. It's almost like, well, if this high-profile personality says it's good, then it must be a good thing to do. So again, it's that trap and enticement, and that's one thing that we've got to be proactive and provide as much education as possible to let them know that just because the celebrity of the day is saying it's good, it doesn't mean it is. So there are lots of possible costs that are associated with these services. Some are a one-time flat fee, which can run anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 or even more in some cases. There are also some recurring monthly fees ranging from $50 a month to a few $100s a month. They're charging consumers who, while they're in that holding pattern of saying, okay, I'm going to go with your service to do debt settlement, and then that transition period, 3 to 4 to 5, 6 months, whatever it takes for that agency to get the creditor to agree, and then it even goes on to 1 or 2, 3 years while that money is compiled to be able to pay off the debt. So that monthly fee is occurring every single month. And then in other cases, they charge setup fees. Or they may charge a fee per deletion of any item off of a consumer's credit report. So the fees are quite substantial, and a lot of consumers aren't aware. They just see that, oh, well, no, they can get this done. It's only going to cost me, a little bit of money. And in actuality, that's not how it happens. So enrolling in a debt settlement program requires that the consumer make monthly installments to the company who holds, and then that company in turn holds those funds into the account until they have the amount the creditors are willing to accept. Now, while this is happening, accounts will continue to fall further and further past due. Often those companies are letting the consumer know, oh, don't pay your bills. We need you to be past due, because that's the trigger point for creditors. They think that they'll become more likely to work with the settlement once that account is at least 3 to 4 months past due. In the meantime, this is destroying the consumer's credit. They're getting the late notices. They're getting the phone calls. Interest and late fees are being applied, and the balances are ballooning. The other piece of it is there's nothing that says a creditor has to accept a settlement. So the creditor at that point can turn it over to collections, which can become even more aggressive in the tactics used to collect the debt. The overreaching theme is that there are no guarantees. Only the creditor can decide whether or not they're willing to accept less than the full balance that's owed. And then there are the legal implications, because many creditors will pursue legal action, up to and including wage garnishment and house liens against the consumer to collect the full balance instead of negotiating with the settlement companies. And then there's the credit impact. Anytime that debt is settled for less than the full amount, it has a highly negative impact on the consumer's credit file. It can even start the moment that they start with that first interaction, because a lot of settlement companies will actually do what's considered a hard pull in the credit file. And every time that inquiry is made, it is another 2 or 3 points taken off that consumer file's credit score. And then there's also the harassment, because typically those accounts, again, have to be that 3 to 4 months past due before a creditor will even begin to entertain the thought of a settlement. And at that point, the phone calls are still happening, the letters are happening. And then if the consumer does go through with a settlement, there are the tax implications, because the forgiven amount can be viewed as income by the IRS and therefore increase the consumer's tax liability. And over all of this, there's the psychological ramifications. There are many individuals who fall victim. They feel like there is this loss of control. There's this loss of, maintaining their obligations. And to them, it's a moral obligation that they weren't able to follow through with. So it's not just about the dollars. It's also about the mental well-being of the client, or the consumer. Of a similar concern are the credit repair companies claiming they can help address negative items that are hurting a consumer's credit score. You see a lot of advertisements that may say credit score increased, negative items removed. You can go from a 520 score to a 650 score in a matter of 6 months. Those are all some of the advertising that goes hand in hand with that type of service. Credit repair companies are often relying on and take advantage of the process that credit bureaus implement when consumers dispute items on their credit report. All consumers have the right to dispute. So usually those items can be removed temporarily while there's an investigation conducted to determine the validity of the debt. It's a brief removal, though, if it's a valid debt. But during that brief interval, the credit score can increase, and that negative trade line be taken off the credit. However, once it is determined it was a valid debt and a valid tracking of the history, then all that negative stuff all of a sudden reappears on the credit history. The credit score goes back down, the trade lines reflect the negative payments. So, and the thing to keep in mind is consumers, again, can do their own disputing of their credit items, and they should do that. They should routinely get their credit report and dispute those items. But it's something they don't have to or should not pay for. Okay. So a lot of it stems from avoiding the victimization. There are several ways consumers can prevent themselves from being targeted by less than legitimate or costly methods to get things corrected on their credit or to get their debts repaid. They should avoid any company that suggests they just stop paying their bills or to stop having any communication with their creditors. Stay away from agencies that charge the upfront fees, and be really cautious. If someone is actively soliciting this business from the consumer, they need to be careful. It should be, if they do entertain entering into any type of service, it should be who they contact, not who contacts them. Suggested hang it up with the robocallers and refrain from utilizing firms that offer to remove valid debt from a credit report. And the alternative of always seeking out a nonprofit agency versus a for-profit. If a consumer has already signed to work with one of these entities and they're starting to question their decision, one of the first steps is to become educated on the other options. And there may be ways to minimize some of the damage that may have already been done. They can cancel the service immediately, always remembering to obtain the documentation that the file was closed. request a full refund of fees or the funds that they've deposited, and then also contact their creditors and explain that they may have been a victim of a scam. All of this documentation should be followed up in writing and something that requires return receipt so that they have proof that someone actually received their correspondence and signed for it. As far as contacting the creditors, most, if not all, creditors have what's called a hardship department that specializes in dealing with situations that the client, or the consumer has become overwhelmed in or gotten into a situation, such as a scam. There are also some other options that they can take. There's not going to be a quick resolution once someone has gotten into the cycle of a scam. It is a lot of work sometimes, but some steps they can take to work towards financial recovery with their legal options is the consumer can sue the company in federal court for actual losses or the amount that they paid them, whichever is greater. They can also seek punitive damages or join in a class action lawsuit against the company. But again, these are not guarantees. It is also highly recommended that they report the potential fraud. There has got to be more awareness, and to help build that awareness, these entities need to be aware of the consumers' activities and also the relationships that they had with companies that present as fraud or scam. It's contacting their local consumer affairs office. It's letting the Better Business Bureau know, working with the state attorney general, and then also reaching out to the Federal Trade Commission. So a lot of, again, the actions up to this point, it's being proactive, but then once involved in the cycle, how did they get out of it? And then the next step is how do they recover? And that is it. Again, I'm not going to, make it sound it's not easy. It is definitely a, process, and it takes some time. I recommend such things as contacting a nonprofit credit counseling agency that is well established, it's reputable. Recommend through the National Foundation for Credit Counseling. There are, national membership organization that maintains a high member quality of standards. The credit counseling agency can help a consumer look at their capacity to repay. Do they have the ability? Are there funds available? Do they know how to budget? What can they do to make good now on those outstanding creditors? Are there options to liquidate that debt? And then help them establish repayment. Through a credit counseling agency, most of them offer debt management plans, which is a 3 to 5 year plan that works with the client and works with the creditors to come up with a timely repayment and move forward. That's not always the best option for the client. So when they are talking to counselors or financial advocates, they're exploring all the other options. Is it a case where that consumer can work directly with that creditor and get a better result? And then guiding the consumer of, okay, what steps do you need to take to contact that creditor? What do you need to tell them? What do you need, and being prepared with a budget and what they can afford to repay. That's one of the options. The other is, is it really a question of, legality, and do they need to explore, legal options, bankruptcy or whatever? And in those cases, because financial advocates and counselors are not attorneys, they are referred to legal counsel. And the other piece of it is education. Again, going back to how important it is for them to understand their credit report, steps to improve it, how they can make the disputes, how they can go ahead and enter in a statement on their credit file to explain why their credit may have been past due. And they could let them know, it was a fraud situation or scam situation, and they're trying to recover, letting them know how to interpret the different scores and the different ratings that are on that credit report and how it could have been impacted by their experience with those entities. And again, if they don't want to go through a credit counseling agency to get that understanding, there are lots of other resources available to them online. The three major credit reporting entities have online education that would really strengthen the awareness of the consumer. The Federal Trade Commission, again, offers lots of different materials to arm consumers with what they can do to protect themselves, move them forward. And then also, if, going back to if they do establish a relationship with a credit counseling agency, an action plan can be created for them so that they know what steps they need to take. And again, it's all about moving forward, recovery, and recognizing there's not an easy answer. Every resolution is tied to that credit report, and it can be time consuming. It could take 7 to 10 years for their credit history to fully recover, but they can see some pretty significant changes as soon as they reestablish that repayment history. And actually, that is everything. Does anyone have any questions that I can answer for you? I know it was a lot of information very quickly.
Trish, that was really, really wonderful. Thank you. If anyone has any questions at all, you can type them into the questions box. Additionally, if you are looking for the handout for this, it is in the handouts box, and you can download that immediately. It will also become available. We'll post this to our website within probably a week or so, and you'll be able to review the presentation if you want to. And so we'll just give it another minute just to see if anybody has any questions that they want to pose. Otherwise, we can. What we can do is I will pull up some of the other trainings. Let's see here. All right. And so on our recorded trainings page, we have the presentation from the Office of the Commissioner of Financial Regulation. In addition, we have next month, our next third Thursday will be the presentation of the Office of the Commissioner of Financial Regulation for the Student Loan Ombudsman. They'll be doing a presentation next week. We also have some really great trainings on life estate deeds and probate, and we have access to some of our longer trainings, including our consumer training that contains a lot of information about bail bonds and other debt collection and landlord-tenant cases. And then we also have our estate planning. We also have we will very soon on this presentation have a bankruptcy training, a divorce training, a custody training, in addition to some more tax trainings and a full encompassing landlord-tenant training. So in the time that I've been chatting about our trainings, we haven't had any questions come in. And so with that, if anyone has any questions after this is over, you're welcome to send me an email. You can, or reach out to me. You can find my contact information on our website under board and staff. My information is up there, and you can reach out to me if you have any questions about any of this. And with that, Trish, I just want to thank you so much for putting on this presentation for us. This has been really wonderful, and I hope that everyone has a great rest of their Thursday.
Well, thank you as well. I really appreciate the opportunity. And if you have any questions regarding our services or what we can do to help with that recovery process, don't hesitate to reach out at www.ccccsmd.org, or you can call me, Trish Geddes, at 1-800-642-2227. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity today.
Great. Thank you so much, Trish. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.